Hi there, thanks for clicking on this video. This is my first time ever recording or editing a YouTube video, so I don't really know what I'm doing. If it's absolutely terrible, I apologize. Just bear with me. Hopefully, I'll get better with time. My name is Neve and I'm from Ireland. At the moment, I'm traveling through Latin America. I'm currently in Guatemala. I've been traveling on my own for the last 5, almost 6 years, on and off. Mostly wanted to make this to help other solo female travelers, not just females, like people of all genders, of course, but especially solo female travelers, because I know all of the challenges that can come with being a young solo female traveler. And I think that with a lot of countries, there's a lot of fear mongering and prejudices when it comes to safety. It's very difficult for us to know what sources to trust and things like that. This first video is going to be about a solo trip I took back in January the same year, 2024. I went to Jordan. It might be a bit of a mess. Again, if it is, I'm sorry. This is my first video. I'm going to just talk about how I ended up traveling the country. Jordan isn't that big of a country. You can travel from the north to the south of Jordan by car, probably in under 6 hours if you weren't considering traffic. The first place that I went to in Jordan was Amman, which is the capital city of Jordan. So Amman is sort of northern Jordan. And I went to Amman because my flight landed there and I stayed there for a few days. First of all, cannot recommend this place enough for solo travelers, but also for if you're traveling as a couple or in a group. It's called Carob Hostel, like Carob. It's in a really good location. I met some really amazing people there, which I'll get into. So Amman is a city that's mostly composed of hills. Like everywhere you go, you can get a really decent view, which I think is super cool. Obviously, if you have any issues with walking a lot, it might not be the best place for you. But I like to walk a lot when I'm traveling, so it was perfect for me. I kind of took the first day to just walk around and see some different things. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't great, but what can you do? I went to the Citadel, which is really beautiful, super high up, and it's just this gorgeous view of the city. Also, when I was up there, I heard the call to prayer, which is one of my favorite things to hear when I'm visiting Muslim countries because it's so peaceful and relaxing. Civilization in Jordan dates back to 7000 BC. Parts of Jordan were conquered by the Roman Empire for over 4 centuries. The most famous Roman site in Jordan is actually called Jerash. It's far north of Jordan. I didn't go there because I didn't have time, but it's something that a lot of people recommended visiting. However, if you don't have time to see Jerash, I would recommend visiting the Roman ruins in Amman, like this amphitheater and these Roman columns that I saw. Food in Jordan is really amazing. They have some traditional dishes such as mansaf, also some influences from other Arabic countries such as Lebanon and Syria. However, I did find this one cafe which is a little bit more expensive than smaller local places, but it's a really nice place if you like to smoke shisha. I also got the hummus and the falafel, and like a typical Westerner, I had a pizza. You can never have too much food, in my opinion. The next day, a girl from my hostel suggested a group of us doing a road trip to visit the Dead Sea and another small city in Jordan close to Amman that's called Madaba. Madaba is really beautiful. It's a really small city and it's a lot more local than Amman is, way less tourists. We checked out a few heritage sites such as churches, mosques, and an archaeological park. After stopping off in Madaba, we decided to drive on down to the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is a famous location in Jordan. It's the most hypersaline lake in the world, and it's also the lowest point on Earth. So it's approximately 430 meters below sea level, which is super interesting. Because of the salt content, when you swim in the Dead Sea, you float completely. There isn't any possibility, pretty much, of you drowning unless you forcibly put your head under the water. The next day, I left pretty early to head to Petra on my own, which was probably the highlight of my trip. If you visit Jordan, you absolutely have to go to Petra. It's a must see, in my opinion. It's one of the seven wonders of the world at current, and it's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's thought to have been inhabited from as early as 5th century BC by an ancient civilization known as the Nabateans. The National Park of Petra is absolutely huge. As I'll talk about a little bit more later, the entry for one day was included in my tourist visa. However, there are options to get a visa that allow you to spend 2 or even 3 days in Petra. So if you have the time on your trip, I would highly recommend this because, as I mentioned, it is huge. You will not see everything within a day. I got there pretty early and I left in the early evening. And I would say I hiked for about 10 hours. I hiked to the Temple of Petra. However, if you have issues with walking, there's also many accessibility options, such as getting a jeep or riding a horse. If you love cats the way I do, I would also recommend bringing a few cat treats or snacks for the cats there. They're super friendly and obviously really hungry, as you can see from the way that they're jumping around me. They're like little monkeys, and I really regretted not bringing any treats for them. I didn't know that there would be so many. I would suggest if you plan to buy some souvenirs or some presents in Jordan to do so by supporting the local people, whether it's in Petra or other markets, because a lot of their stuff is handmade and extremely beautiful. Before you leave the heritage site, if you have 30 minutes to spare, I would really recommend stopping by the Free Museum in Petra. It gives you a lot more of a historical context and explains more about the Nabateans, the civilization that lived there, a lot better than I can do in a few minutes. Just wanted to include this clip to show an example of how kind the people in Jordan are. There was no other customers when I got the bus to Aqaba after I was finished at Petra, and they still drove me there anyway, even with just one person. I feel like in a lot of countries, the service probably wouldn't run. And the guys on the bus were super nice. They were playing music. Aqaba is a city in the south of Jordan, so there's a warmer climate. It has a beach and it's right on the Red Sea, so close to Egypt. And it's really nice. It's a lot more relaxed in comparison to cities like Amman. Everyone is super friendly. Felt really safe there, even walking around at night as a solo female traveler. And everyone was just very helpful, like gave me directions. It was really nice to relax for a few days in Aqaba after having such a busy trip. I mostly just sat by the beach and read my book. I also went to this really nice restaurant, which I can't remember the name of. I'm going to see if I can find it. But I had shisha and a mocktail in there. It was funny. You can see the passion in the local people's reaction when Jordan scored against Iraq in a football match. This is the owner or the manager of the restaurant. I don't know. And you can just see how excited he is and how professionalism was lost, which I love. Once I was in Aqaba, I also linked up again with some of the people that I had met in my hostel in Amman. I'm probably going to be mentioning this a lot in my videos, but one of my favorite things about solo traveling is that most of the time it actually isn't solo. Sometimes it's great to spend time alone and enjoy your own company, but especially when you stay in hostels or go on tours, you're always going to meet like minded people. My favorite things about traveling alone is the people I meet. I feel like
Jordanian
traveling
style.
alone makes me a lot more open to meeting other people. Whereas if I was with friends or family, I would tend to just speak to the people I know and be less open. So we drove back together in the same car that the girl from my hostel rented for the trip to the Dead Sea. And on our way back to Amman, where I was getting my flight from, we stopped in Wadi Rum, which is the desert in Jordan. It's in the south of Jordan, not too far from Aqaba. There's a lot of great tours that you can do in Wadi Rum where you stay overnight and things like that. However, I didn't have the time to do that, so we just stopped by for a couple of hours. We saw a few of the sites and we also did this. I don't really know what the name of this is, if you call it like tobogganing or something like that. It was basically just a mattress, not like a proper board with some of the local guys, but it was a lot of fun. The desert is absolutely phenomenal. Some parts of it have this red sand that can be likened to Mars, sort of like a red, orange, grainy color. So, before I conclude the video, I just want to run through a few logistic things and maybe some tips. The first being safety and the local culture. I need to be honest, I felt extremely safe in Jordan as a solo female traveler. You saw from this video that I wasn't alone all of the time because I did meet people. However, I did do quite a lot of things alone too, and there was not at one point whatsoever that I felt unsafe. Didn't get any harassment. I didn't have any problems from anyone or anything. For context, I've been to roughly, give or take, 35 countries, mostly within Latin America and Europe. This was my first experience in a country in the Middle East, Central Middle East to be more specific. I didn't have any problems whatsoever. It's also really important to be respectful of the local culture if you go to Jordan. Jordan is a Muslim country. People there are extremely open to other cultures and they love tourists. However, I just think it's respectful to follow local guidelines, So, you know, dress appropriately, research what you should wear before Jordan. I'm going to put a few pictures of the things that I mostly wore. Also, bear in mind that drinking alcohol is not a common practice in Jordan because, as I mentioned, it is a Muslim country. It's totally okay to drink alcohol, but just make sure that you do it either in private, in your hotel or your hostel. Please don't do it in public or on the streets. The way I always look at things when I'm traveling is you should do as the Romans do. So if the local people aren't doing that, then you probably shouldn't do it either. Just out of respect, you know, it's also a good opportunity to integrate with a culture that might be different to yours if you're from the West. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the cost. So overall, if you were coming from a Western country, especially if your currency is in euros or dollars, Jordan is going to be pretty affordable for you. A little bit of context to this, and one of the reasons why I think it's important to support the local people and the local economy in Jordan is that Jordan is a Middle Eastern country and it's next to the Gulf. However, Jordan does not have oil, so this makes the economy weaker compared to those of other Middle Eastern countries. If you want to stay in hostels the way I did, most hostels in Amman, Aqaba, Madaba, and Petra are somewhere between 7 to 11 euro a night. I'm just going to use euros here because that's our currency in Ireland, so it's easier. The local currency in Jordan is the Jordanian dirham. If you want to eat food pretty locally, you can go to most local takeaways for falafel or for mansaf or for a sandwich, etc. It's usually going to cost you anywhere between 2 and 5 euros in Amman, and if you're in smaller cities such as Madaba, it could even be less than that. The main bus company for tourists and also some Jordanians between cities is called Jet Buses. You can find this website online. There's probably also more local buses that you can take using cash. However, I wasn't there for a very long time, so I mostly just used the Jet Buses, walking, and Uber. Uber also works in Jordan. The jet buses usually only go a couple times a day, so it might be useful to plan in advance if that's possible for you. The jet buses are anywhere between 10 and 20 euro per ride. So if it's a longer ride, for example, when I was going from Aqaba to Amman, I think it was a bit more expensive, something like 20 euros, simply because it's so far. That's basically like the entire country, that bus ride, because Jordan is quite small. However, if you're going a shorter distance, then it might be a bit less. And the last thing I want to mention is the visa. So obviously this will totally depend where your home country is and your passport. For me, I'm from Ireland, so I did need to get a visa to go to Jordan. My visa was like somewhere between 80 and 90 euros. And this included the visa, it included a free train ride, sort of like a tourist thing in Amman, which actually I didn't end up doing because I didn't have enough time, but it does include that. And it also includes your ticket to Petra. It's super easy. You just go online and search the tourist visa for Jordan. It's really not difficult. It's an electronic visa and it's a very quick and easy process. So I really appreciate that because, as I mentioned before, Jordan is trying to increase its tourism. And yeah, that pretty much concludes this video. As I mentioned, this is my first ever YouTube video, so I'm really sorry if it was kind of terrible. And also I'm sorry for the quality. I'm doing everything from my phone because I don't have a camera right now. Thank you so much for watching if you did make it to the end. And the next video I make will probably be about this current trip that I've been on in Guatemala. I've been here for the last month, so I will make that video as soon as possible. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope it was helpful. Goodbye.